The most embarrassing sentence of my life came out of my mouth in front of 32 people, and the woman I accidentally called Babe was my CEO. The conference room went completely silent. I stared at the presentation screen, wishing I could disappear, while Victoria Bennett slowly turned her head toward me with an expression I couldn't read. Then she smiled not angrily, not professionally, but almost sadly and said, "Ethan, my office. Now, T-Wan Ho down. If you believe that kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances can change a person's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us that hearts can heal in unexpected ways. My name is Ethan Carter, and until that morning, I had spent 3 years making sure I never crossed a professional line with Victoria. She was brilliant, disciplined, and intimidating without ever being cruel. I was a project manager at her company in Chicago, Illinois, and I had built my entire reputation on being dependable. But that particular week, I was exhausted. My mother, Grace, had been struggling financially after losing her small bakery, and I had been quietly working overtime to help her pay the bills. I hadn't slept properly in days. During the conference, Victoria asked me for the revised numbers, and without thinking, I glanced up from my laptop and said, "Sure, babe, they're right here." The silence afterward was so complete that I could hear the air conditioner humming. When I stepped into Victoria's office, I expected a lecture, perhaps even a warning from Human Resources. Instead, she closed the door and leaned against her desk. "Where is my kiss?" she asked with the faintest smile. I froze. She immediately laughed and waved a hand. "Relax, I'm teasing you." But then her expression changed. She had noticed the dark circles beneath my eyes and asked what was wrong. I tried to brush it off, but Victoria had a strange ability to see through people. Eventually, I told her about my mother's bakery, the unpaid rent, and how terrified I was that Grace would lose the one thing she had spent 25 years building. Victoria listened without interrupting. Then she said something I never expected from a CEO. "You don't always have to carry everything alone, Ethan." The next morning, I discovered that Victoria had arranged a meeting with the company's community outreach director. She hadn't given my mother money. Instead, she had learned about the bakery's history and found a local small business grant that Grace qualified for. She also connected us with a non-profit that helped neighborhood businesses rebuild their customer base. It wasn't a handout. It was an opportunity. My mother cried when she heard about it, but I was still uneasy. I worried that accepting help from my boss would make me look weak. Victoria simply told me, "There is nothing weak about accepting a hand when you've spent years offering yours to everyone else." Over the next few months, everything began to change. Grace's bakery reopened with a modest new sign, and customers slowly returned. Ethan's work improved because he was finally sleeping again, and Victoria became less like an unreachable executive and more like a person he could actually talk to. One evening, after a long day, they stood by the office windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Victoria admitted that she had spent years building the company because she believed success could protect her from disappointment. Her father had abandoned the family when she was young, and she had learned never to depend on anyone. Ethan understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. They weren't falling in love because of a dramatic moment. They were becoming important to each other because, little by little, they were learning how to trust again. Still, Ethan knew their positions made everything complicated. He decided to resign rather than risk their professional relationship. When he placed the letter on Victoria's desk, she read it quietly. For a moment, he thought she would accept it. Instead, she pushed the paper back toward him and said, "Don't leave because you're afraid of what might happen. Leave only if this isn't what you want." Ethan looked at her and realized that, for the first time in his life, someone wasn't asking him to sacrifice himself to prove he cared. Months later, after Ethan had moved into a different department and their professional boundaries were completely clear, Victoria invited him to dinner at Grace's bakery. It wasn't a fancy restaurant. There were mismatched chairs, fresh bread cooling near the window, and Grace laughing behind the counter. After dinner, Victoria quietly handed Ethan a small note. It simply said, You once called me babe by accident. I'm still waiting for you to say it when you mean it." Ethan laughed, but his eyes filled with tears. He took her hand and finally said, "Babe." This time, there was no embarrassment, no silence, and no fear. Only two people who had discovered that sometimes the most unexpected mistakes can lead you exactly where your heart was meant to go. If this story touched something inside you, please let that feeling travel a little farther. Like the video, share it with someone who believes people deserve second chances, and subscribe if you want more stories about hope, kindness, and unexpected love. And before the story ends, leave a comment telling me this. Have you ever made an embarrassing mistake that unexpectedly changed your life for the better? Sometimes the moment we wish we could erase becomes the moment we remember forever. Ethan learned that day that one careless word could open a door, but it was kindness, courage, and trust that taught him how to walk through it.